You wrote an article about training camp preview players to watch as well. Deshaun Watson, we've talked a little bit about. We want to see kind of the structure and how that rehab continues. I'm guessing that's what you were getting at with Watson.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it. And it was all what we talked about. Just what a big year it is for him. Does he feel the pressure? That kind of thing. And yeah, when is he at 100%? Does day one he take every rep? Does he take days off still? Right. At some point, I think we'll be past that, but you still have to monitor it.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, that's another one. And we've heard various reports that they have kind of, there's a little bit of a difference between the number that JOK wants in an extension and a new contract and what the Browns are thinking. Plenty of time to get there, though.
Yeah, I mean, if there weren't a difference, then we'd have a contract extension announced by now, right? Um, I just don't see any way that JOK doesn't get an extension. The Browns traded up to draft him in the second round at a position that they don't usually spend a ton of resources at. They're not going to let the guy walk out the door 4 years after he's been here without a second contract, especially after the breakthrough year he had last year, Pro Bowl, 20 tackles for loss. So I think it's just a matter of when JOK gets it. And it could be tomorrow, right? It could be Thursday before the first practice of camp. Maybe it's before week one. Maybe it's December, November, like Grant Delpit when he got his extension. But I think it'll come, and I think it'll come before, free agency next year.
Myles Garrett's another one. What are you thinking with Garrett?
Well, I was putting that list together, and I almost didn't include Garrett just because he's such a given to me, right? He's going to be great. He's going to get a bunch of sacks. He's coming off Defensive Player of the Year, but he's still, he's arguably the team's best player, right? And he should be on this list. And to me, the question is, number one, what does he do for an encore coming off the first Defensive Player of the Year? Does that free him up? Do the additions to the defensive line and the retentions to the defensive line allow Garrett to go to a next level, especially statistically? And then it's for him, and I believe him. I think at some point his attention shifted from Defensive Player of the Year and kind of per individual goals to team goals. And I think it's been a couple years now, or a few years. And he talks about the Super Bowl and how important it is to bring one to Cleveland, at least one to Cleveland. And I think he's got a chance this year, right? If things go right, the Browns should be in that discussion. And that drives him. And I think that's an important thing to talk about heading into this season because he's such a good player, but it goes beyond that for him.
Jedrick Wills Jr. is another one. It's a guy that we talked a little bit coming off an injury. I'm curious to see, is there a difference with Andy Dickerson, the new offensive line coach? Sometimes, and Bill Callahan is one of the best offensive line coaches that has ever coached offensive line in the NFL. Sometimes a different voice for different guys works.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Dave, and you could be right, and maybe it does. I think Callahan was more of it. We talked about yellers. He was more of a screamer, right? He held guys accountable, which obviously you need to do, but you can do it in different ways. And I think Dickerson just has a different personality, different vibe to him. Maybe that will get the most out of Jedrick Wills. The other part of the situation with Wills this season is he's also in the last year of his contract. The Browns picked up that fifth-year rookie option, and it doesn't feel like they're close to an extension. Now, I don't know that, but if I'm the Browns, I want to see more out of Jed Wills, right? Before you commit big money. And we're talking, guards are getting $20 million, right? Left tackles are getting at least that, and we're not talking the top of the market left tackles. So there's no way the Browns, I don't think, are ready to commit top of the market left tackle money to Jed Wills. And they need to see more out of him. If he comes out and plays at a Pro Bowl level this year, then maybe they say, hey, we got our guy at left tackle. And then they decide to make that long-term commitment, which would make sense. He was a number 10 pick in the draft. We just haven't seen enough, and I don't think they've seen enough to make that commitment yet, which is why this is such a key year, because it's a premium position, right? And you can say, okay, maybe just slide DeJuan Jones to left tackle for 2025, and maybe you do, but then that opens a big hole at right tackle, right? So that's why Wills is important, and this is an important year for him.
And then Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, and we'll talk a little bit about Cedric Tillman after this, but Jeudy and Tillman, take us through those two.
Yeah, I mean, the importance gets ratcheted up if there's any kind of issue with Cooper, right? Cooper's not there, or they decide to trade Cooper, whatever, right? If there's an lingering issue with Cooper, then Judy and Tillman become more important. But even with Cooper, um, he needs help. He needs support. You're trying to do all you can for Deshaun Watson. You're going to play 3 and 4 receivers. You need those guys to have an impact. They spent big money on Judy, right? They traded for him, gave him that extension. He needs to play like a legit number two. He needs to play better than he has at any time with the Broncos. So that's a big question mark. Cedric Tillman, the Browns are relying on him. I think he's going to take some of Elijah Moore's snaps as that third receiver. I think he's going to be out there a good amount, but he needs to show he deserves that playing time. And the only way to do that is by producing. And we saw glimpses last year, but not enough.